Hey, Terrence, how's it going? Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you? Sorry I've been MIA. The last few weeks has just been like super busy.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I saw that you guys are ready to or getting ready to launch the test net. That's super exciting.
Right, yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there.
Oh
Slowly
man.
but surely.
I'm sure, is it hectic? I'm sure it's hectic right now.
Yeah, it's super crazy. There are just so many issues that like we haven't even thought of, and we're just
Uh-huh.
seeing those issues right now, and it's
Right,
so hard to debug too, this type of issues.
right. Oh man. Well, I admire all the work you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Hey, Howie, how's it going?
Hi.
Yo, pretty good. Hey, Kevin. Hey,
Hey.
Terrence.
Hey.
Um, yeah, so I was thinking for this what was it? Yeah, so I was thinking for this session, maybe we could just go over any questions that anyone had on exercise sets one and two, and then maybe just sort of crowdsource answers that we weren't able to figure out, and then maybe go over a couple of the questions on the problem set. But this will probably just be a relatively quick session then, unless there's a lot of questions,
Right.
Sure.
just to make sure everyone's on the same page and we're all caught up and everything. That's cool.
All right.
Exercise set one and two, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can pull it up.
Give me just a second.
So is this stuff that you guys are trying to debug? Is it just sort of stuff that happens when you're actually running the test net, like stuff that's like not addressed in the spec? It's just sort of like real
Right.
world.
So we have like I think we did a pretty good job on the unit testing wise. Like
Yeah.
most of our code has like 80% coverage, so pretty darn good. But once you get into production, then like all the different nodes talk to each other. But you can't really unit test that scale level, that
Uh
many.
huh.
So then we run into issues where it's not really these edge cases. There's not really defined in the spec, but it does show up but it does show up at the runtime level.
Uh huh.
And then we went back and asked the researchers, like, hey, what do we do with this case? So just
Right.
follow. Yeah.
And do they usually have solutions to that?
They usually have solutions, and then after that, they just update the spec. Just like spec itself is a general guideline. It's hard to cover all the scenarios just writing the spec. So it definitely requires a lot of effort. Like implementers and researchers work closely together.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
All right. Cool.
Um, okay, so yeah, Howie, did you get a chance to go through exercise set number one?
Actually, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I,
All right.
I, I know I said I'll like do it by this week, but
Uh,
No worries.
yeah.
okay, so we've already gone over exercise set one, and I posted my answers, which I think were fine.
Right.
So yeah, if you do want to check answers for that, that's on the forum. So I think we could probably just go over that. I mean, we could just skip
Okay,
that since we've already done that. Um,
sure.
um, I did post a video of me and Ed going over exercise set number two, and I think we got answers to most of the questions.
Mhm.
But I was just wondering if anyone had any questions. And then maybe between Ed and I, we have a solution.
Right. Let's see, exercise two.
Well,
Um,
you said exercise set 2, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now.
The last question is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's actually one where Ed and I kind of got stuck. We were just trying to figure out. Yeah, I think that's the only question that we actually didn't really have a good answer to.
Yeah, like the rest are like, I feel like I could figure it out, like given enough time. The
Yeah.
last one is, huh.
Here, let me share my screen. Then we can look at it together.
Okay.
Let's see that.
The reservation principle states that the SIC mechanism is
All right, let me pull up the definition again.
Talking about today so far.
So yeah, it says the revelation principle. So direct revelation is where the participants truthfully report all of its private information to the mechanism. So it's like submitting your honest bid. I actually emailed Tim Roughgarden about this, and
Did you reply?
yeah, well, he pointed me in the direction of a hint. He was like, you should look at like Sotheby's. So Sotheby's is like an art auction place, and they just do like what we consider like a normal open outcry auction. So like, people hold up their signs or whatever, and then they'll be like, $1 million or like $1,005,000, like $1,010,000. So he's like, that's an example of one where you wouldn't want to directly reveal the amount that you want to bet.
right.
But I'm not sure how exactly like revealing what you bet would be in that situation, because you can't. Yeah, I'm not sure. So I think if you just like said, if the bid was at like $1 million and you said like, well, my truthful bid is 2 million, and you just sort of raised your sign, you're like, hey, I'm willing to bid 2 million, then you would get charged 2 million in this kind of auction. So you obviously wouldn't want to do that. That's not the dominant strategy.
Right.
So then it doesn't even follow this exercise.
Right.
I think one thing that you can do in those auctions is you can call in and tell them how much you're willing to bid, and then they'll just like keep like bidding for you automatically, just sort of like how eBay does it. And I think in that case, that honestly seems like the best. That seems fine. Like it's definitely the dominant strategy. If it just keeps like outbidding the second highest bidder until it reaches your valuation. But I think maybe there's a reason why you wouldn't want to do that. Like maybe your valuation changes based off of what other people are saying, or maybe you don't want to reveal that you're like constantly bidding. Like maybe you would want to wait till the last minute to bid for some reason, or I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't actually. So
I'm just reading up on like what it's an English auction.
Yeah, an English auction. Right.
So the question is basically asking, let's say if today we have a bid of a car and then the starting price is at what, 30,000, and then you basically reveal that the max you want to bid is 40,000, and then you start incrementing at 30,000, 31, 32, 33, and then you win, right? But then is it bad to reveal that the max bid, so the max bid you offer is 40,000? Is that right? Because if you reveal that, and someone has the information, like what type of advantage that someone has, right? That.
I think this is the thing that Ed and I got caught up on is like, yeah, maybe you wouldn't want to tell them because like, what if the auction isn't honest and they'll try to force you to your highest bid or something, you know, like what if they'll just, they could just keep bidding, doing like fake bids. Like they could have someone in the audience who works for Sotheby's who's like bidding up until they reach your highest bid and then you're screwed. But
I think like,
yeah,
it might be related to that. Because you observe everyone's bids, you might revise your own valuation based on the bid.
Right.
Yeah, if like everyone values it at like some amount, you're like, okay, maybe it's worth more than I thought. And you just continue bidding above your like previous valuation. But I'm not sure how do you even prove that formally, like to answer the question.
Also, it just seems like in all those cases where your valuation is changing or where like the auction's not honest, then your dominant strategy is not to reveal. Like it's not your dominant strategy anymore to reveal your bid.
And you cannot change your bid, right? Let's say if your max bid is 40,000, you have to stick with that. You cannot later go, hey, it's actually 42,000. Right?
Yeah. I guess you're right. Yeah, I guess it doesn't say it has to be the dominant strategy. It says it would be DSIC. Yeah. I think maybe you might be right, Howie, that it's like your valuation is changing based off of the interest in the item. So you wouldn't want to reveal your valuation up front.
Right. I see.
That could be it.
I feel like I went through like a similar-ish example in like the game theory class I'm taking this semester.
Okay.
Yeah, like we actually have to like write out like the Bayesian Nash equilibriums and stuff, and I can't really remember what's going on, but it was something to do about like valuations and bidders taking like the other party's valuation into account. Yeah. So I think like when it's a sealed bid thing, like your valuation won't change because you have nothing to observe, right?
Right.
Like private values remain private. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. I'm happy with that answer.
Direct revelation.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to. Right. That makes sense. Your valuation's changing. Cool.
Yeah, like I think like to answer the question, like we can name that as an example, but I'm not sure how do you like prove that it's like what non-direct revelation. Is that it?
Yeah, I don't think we have to prove anything. He just says, like, in the real world, just name at least one situation in which you might prefer not directly revealing.
Because, like, we are just, like, hypothesizing, right?
Yeah.
That in, like, the English auction, people will deviate from bidding their private values. But
Which
that might not be the case.
I think it probably is true. Like if no one's bidding on something, I might start valuing it yet less. Or if, let's say I see someone who's like an art expert bidding really high on this piece of art, maybe I start valuing it more because I think he knows something I don't, or I don't know.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. I can see that happening in practice, and yeah, I guess it's just really hard to formalize like that notion in like the framework of things that we are given so far.
Yeah, I guess it definitely is hard to formalize.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. That's interesting.
Yeah. Also, I shared this last time, but I thought this was relevant. I'm talking about Sotheby's auctions. This is like a quote from Charlie Munger about these auctions, like Sotheby's auctions, saying it's just made to turn the brain into mush. You've got social proof because like everyone else is bidding, so you feel like you have to bid. You get reciprocation tendency, and you get deprival superreaction syndrome, meaning the thing is about to go away. They're like, you have 3 seconds before this piece of art goes away forever. It's just absolutely designed to manipulate people into idiotic behavior. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting.
And that actually kind of ties into like why, like it would be better for the bidders to have like a sealed bid auction. But it's better for the sellers to like force people into like trying to outbid each other and like feeling like they need the thing.
Right. Yeah, it maximizes the seller's revenue.
Yeah, for sure. Do you guys have any other questions on any of the exercise 2 stuff?
Let me see.
I haven't done anything, but the rest look like pretty all right.
Okay.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, cool.
It's like when you find the answer, you can, you basically know if you're right or wrong. Like you can feel it, kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then I guess for problem set 1, I don't know if you guys had a chance to think about any like real world systems, maybe in the crypto space, where like the goals of the participants and the designer are fundamentally misaligned, leading to non-trivial strategic behavior by the participants. And you should also give proposals for how the system could be improved or mitigate the incentive problems.
Would they mention that gas token and the rent are pretty good, right?
Yeah. Right. So that being like, right, the fact that you can take up storage. Yeah, you can buy storage and then buy storage when the gas fees are low and then sell it when the gas fees are high.
Right. Because we're only charging storage fee for the first time. We're not charging it for how long to store the data for. So therefore,
right,
people can play the game. Yeah.
And then the solution is to introduce like a ongoing storage rent.
Right.
And I guess that fixes the problem because it's a lot less clear whether it will be profitable.
Right, exactly.
Like it could be profitable, but it would need to somehow get congested really fast.
Right.
Whereas now they could wait. They could wait until the next CryptoKitties kind of like thing and then sell it.
Right.
All right. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, I had an idea that I kind of wanted to run by you guys that for this problem.
Sure.
So the idea comes from like there was a Twitter thread from like this guy Hasib Qureshi, but he was talking about how this was after like the Ethereum Classic 51% attack, and he was saying how 51% attacks, they let you double spend, and fundamentally, like there's not a lot of people who accept crypto. People who are getting double spent on are mainly exchanges. Like,
Right.
who can you send a lot of crypto to and then get real, like, whatever US dollars and like large amounts?
Yeah.
It's most likely exchanges. So exchanges are like, and generally, when someone does a reorg, they include all the other transactions because it's just extra transaction fees. Like, if they're not double spending it, then you might as well include your transactions. So it doesn't really affect the average user; it just affects exchanges who are getting double spent on. So the argument is, like, exchanges should have ready access to rent hash power. So let's say Ethereum Classic, someone 51% attacked, and they double spent like it's like $250,000 on this exchange, like Gate.io. What if Gate.io had access to a bunch of like mining hash power, and then once they noticed that they'd been double spent on, like once the fork got published, the longer fork got published, what if they just started renting that hash power and then mining on the shorter chain, the chain that like had their payment in it? And then you just have like the attack, like this is the spend to Gate.io, and then the attacker publishes a longer chain, but then Gate.io rents a bunch of hash power to try to outpace them, and then they're like both wasting money to the point where either Gate.io has the longer chain and then gets their money back, or like the double spend wasn't successful, or the attacker has just lost so much money because they've spent so much time, so much hash power trying to outpace Gate.io. So in that case, they've both lost money. Like, Gate.io has lost a ton of money. The attacker has lost a ton of money. But if Gate.io has that attack in its arsenal, then the attacker would never have double spent on Gate.io, because the attacker would have been like, if I double spend, I'm going to lose money.
Right.
What if the attacker just rents like all the available hash power on the market?
What's what?
What if the attacker just rents like all the available hash power? Like, you go to what's nice hash or
Nice
something?
hash, yeah.
Yeah, then you just rent like all like the ETH hash, like mining power.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, a couple of hours.
Right.
Right.
That's basically what you'd be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, but once the attacker like rents everything, you also deny like the exchange from renting the same hash power to attack you. So
right.
And after some point of time, like the chain will be too long until the exchange will just give up. Because honest miners will still be mining like on the longer
chain. Exactly. Yeah. So I guess ideally what you would need is like, you would need to have more hash power than the miner as soon as they publish. So as fast as possible, you get like all the honest miners mining on your chain.
Right.
Yeah. I was thinking about this. So for forks like Ethereum Classic, it'd probably be easier to like rent 51% of hash power by just you could just get like a small number of Ethereum miners to switch over,
right?
Or for Bitcoin, like Bitcoin Cash, or for like Bitcoin Store Value or whatever, like, or Satoshi's Vision, sorry. You could just get like Bitcoin miners to just switch over, and you wouldn't need that many. You'd need like whatever 5% of Bitcoin miners, and then you'd have 51% of the hash rate. But if you're trying to protect against like 51% attacks on Bitcoin or ETH, you can't do that. Like, you can't nice hash 51% of the hash power.
Right.
So I was thinking what you could do. So I was thinking you could sort of expand this to be like an insurance agency. So all these exchanges pay like a certain amount a year to get insurance against double spends. And then, so in the case of a double spend on one of these insured companies, this organization would um, they would need to convince 51% of existing miners to defect and mine on the shorter chain to undo the reorganization.
Right.
So they basically need a 51% attack the chain like back.
Right.
But what you,
Interesting concept.
yeah, but what you could do is you could have some automated software that detects reorganizations, like like Coinbase detected the Ethereum Classic reorganization.
Right.
So you could have miners detect that. Only when they detect a reorganization do they essentially like do they defect from protocol rules and mine on the shorter chain. And I think they'd be incentivized to do that as well, because when double spends are successful, it decreases the value of the coin. And a lot of these people have ASICs, and like if I'm a Bitcoin mining farm and I have ASICs, like I don't want the price of Bitcoin to drop. It might even drop more than 10% like Ethereum Classic did. Like I don't want the price of Bitcoin to drop like that. So I'd rather defect from mining on the longest chain to prevent a double spend from happening.
Right.
But what if it's like you have Bitcoin ASICs, but what if the 51% attack occurred on like a fork of Bitcoin? So like Bitcoin SV or ABC or something.
Well, then you could just rent hash power, probably. No? Or you could probably rent a decent amount from Bitcoin itself in that case.
I feel like you might be creating an unintended consequence of this is there's an incentive to successfully attack the chain, right?
Yeah,
like if I'm an attacker, like I'll just buy insurance, then I'll attack it.
I'll buy insurance and not attack it.
Like I'll buy insurance from like this company.
Mm-hmm.
I'll attack it. I'll get the double spend coins, and then like the insurance like pays me out. Okay, see, let me redo that whole thing. So, say like an exchange partners with I don't know, Bitmain or something, a
Mm-hmm.
big mining pool.
Mm-hmm.
The exchange buys a huge insurance policy against like one of those smaller Bitcoin coins, like Bitcoin Private, Bitcoin ABC, that kind of thing.
Okay.
That's a 51% attack
On themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like they basically they just move the funds from like wallet A to wallet B or something. They still own it, but because the exchange got hacked, they can claim like an insurance payout.
Oh, I think part of the insurance, it wouldn't be like you get a payout. It would just be you're just gonna get your payment, the normal payment.
Right.
So like the okay.
Yeah,
So
I guess you'd hope that the insurance company would ensure that like the double spend will not succeed. It will like get enough hash power that it will not, like the double spend will not go through the reorganization.
Gotcha. So you're like paying a fee
to ensure you
to like borrow hash power when you need it, basically.
Basically, yeah. And I guess the idea behind this is like you would never even need to use this because no attacker would attack an insured company because they're going to lose money.
Right. Listen, there's no incentive for like the attacker because he's gonna.
It's not going to work.
It just increases his costs, I guess.
Yeah, but it depends on how much hash power the insurance company has. But if the insurance company has 51% of the existing hash power, then they can make sure that that attacker just never even gets the double spend in the first place. So the attacker wastes the hash power, but their fork they don't even get the block rewards.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I think that'll work. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then there's also all these like reasons why, because essentially you're 51% attacking the chain, but there's reasons why this isn't actually that bad because like you'd be this really big public entity. So if you are ever you're ever doing one of these attacks, like you're a pretty easy target. Like if you used your 51% power to double spend on someone, like they'd be like, oh, it was the insurance agency, obviously. Like
Yeah.
they could tell it was you.
Right.
And then you could also say like, if I'm, yeah, you could put explicit rules into like the mining pools will be mining for me, but they'll have explicit rules that like they will include all transactions, or like they won't censor, and like, there will be explicit rules. So it's like having 51% of the hash power is limited to only defensive use cases.
As in, if you are renting hash power, like you might just set up like formal contracts with mining pools and
Mm-hmm.
at least like centralized mining pools, like not those where people join and leave whenever they want.
Mm-hmm.
You just have an agreement where like in the case of an attack, like I can borrow like this much hash power at
Exactly.
some like fixed rate or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you could also say like, if the insurance company like claims that there's a reorganization when there actually isn't, or something, or like, tries to abuse this contract, then like that's illegal as well. Like you can only use it in the case of a reorganization. It's kind of funny though, because this whole idea is like preventing double spends, like preventing the main attack on on blockchains with like contracts in like real, like, the real world legal system, which I feel like is like very counter, like it's very against the whole culture.
Right.
but it does, like it would work, I think. I don't know, I can't think of why this wouldn't work, other than like the community vehemently hating it and being like, you can't sign a contract if you're a pool, you can't work with lawyers, or you can't.
As in, I think it's fine because like the contracts are only used to enforce that like people have to take a certain action. It's it's just like the real world equivalent of like cryptography or something.
Right.
Yeah,
it's almost like for proof of stake, what if we signed a contract with Joe Lubin to say, if Ethereum, if there's ever a reorganization that double spends on one of these insured companies, you'll let us borrow your coins to stake against them. And then,
Jesus, that'll be a bit scary.
And then we pay him like a certain amount a year, and he probably never has to do it because we've got like this insurance.
Right.
Like it could probably be extended to proof of stake too.
Right. I feel like someone like Vitalik would be down to just, if like the operation is like, if this company is legit enough, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind us like loaning you some coin or something.
But this would be like part of the smart contract, or this would be more like a social contract that
it would be like a combination of like, there would be some software built on top of the client, like on top of a node, that detects if there's a reorg, which is, I guess, is pretty easy if you just like find a new fork that's like 7 blocks long on Bitcoin. You're like, okay, that's a reorg, and then checks if one of the double spent addresses is in a list of like insured addresses.
Right.
And then if that is, then you just mine on the shorter chain.
Right. But how do we guarantee like Joe Rubin has the money, or at that point Joe Rubin is willing to give the money that where he doesn't violate the contract, right?
Yeah, that's important too. I was thinking for the hash power, because it'd be weird if like the mining pool sets up the software, but if they never have to carry out an attack, there's no way to really prove that they actually would in the case of an attack. Like let's say 3 years goes by and like there's no attack.
Right.
How do you know that the mining pool is still committed? I mean, that would be through a contract mainly, is like if the software detects a reorganization and one of the attack companies is insured, then, and they don't mine on the shorter chain, then like they're legally, they violated the contract.
Yeah. As in, I think you can set up like a lot of real world things against that. You have like LLCs,
Mhm.
you have right, like in the case like you go back on a contract or something,
Mhm.
then like the exchange will just sue your LLC or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was thinking of something else you could do, but I mean, I think the contract really settles it. Like, it's if they're worried about like going to court, then they're just gonna do it. And also, you'd be paying them like an annual fee to do this as well, so
Right.
incentivized.
I think this type of principle is a lot easier to implement in proof of stake. So, for example, like what we can do is we can have this insurance contract, right? And then basically, this insurance contract, people can put money in there, and people can act as like insurance. So you can deposit 1,000 in there, and then you get a few percent back a year. And that contract can use some sort of like all virtual system where the smart contract can detect if there is like a reward that happened in on the main chain. And when there is a reward happen, the main contract can spawn off validators basically to save the reward. So the whole thing can be done like autonomously, you know.
Wow. So you can have a contract be a like stake. You can have a staking
Like a
contract.
staking insurance contract, yeah, and then basically launches additional validator similar to proof of work. It launches additional miner, but this time it just launches additional validator. Because for proof of stake, we just need money to basically change the chain, right? As long as we put more money on that chain, and that chain becomes the dominant chain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. And then also you have the solution of like if there is a really big, if someone does have 51% of the hash power, then you could just like, I guess it would be a big coordination problem, but you could just fork the chain and then like.
But the contract should
Yeah.
know which chain to fork to, right? Because knows which chain is getting attacked. So you don't have to rely on social coordination for this.
Right. You just need a good oracle that can detect a reorganization.
The oracle.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's interesting to think that like, yeah, I mean, because if we have stuff like that, then it does like break the rule of like always mine on the longest chain, which feels kind of wrong, but you could essentially just get rid of double spends.
Right.
Which is, and then like, then blockchains there's no downside, I guess. Like, I don't know. If you don't have 51% attacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Maybe I'll flesh this out a little more and write an article.
Nice.
It's interesting. Definitely interesting. But I feel like to get that started, you definitely need like someone that bankrolls your entire operation or something. You need to borrow like social credit from people or something, because no exchange is gonna sign some insurance contract with like a new startup kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you would need the hash power first, I think. You would need to sign with the mining pools first.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the hard, because if you have the mining pools signed on, then the exchanges will follow. But I think
you could
mining pools to mine on the shorter chain is probably pretty hard.
You could sign a contract with a mining pool that lets you borrow hash power, and when you borrow hash power, you just pay them like some rate.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, instead of like a yearly fee kind of thing.
Yeah,
you just pay when you use it.
Yeah, you could do that. I think the downside to that is like then they don't necessarily have a reason to keep it available, to keep the hash power available to you. Like they're not getting paid for keeping it available. They're only getting paid if you use it. If you never use it, then they might not keep it available.
As in, you can offer to pay a premium, like when you use it, I guess.
Yeah, you could just pay a rate, an annual rate, and pay them.
Yeah, like maybe a smaller annual rate plus like a premium when you need to rent or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like from your perspective, like I don't think it's a downside, right?
But then the question does come up that I think many people would be concerned about is like, if my mining pool has signed this contract, like they're going to be using my hash power to potentially, this guy could just trick them and like use like, and then 51% attack the chain himself.
Right. Okay.
But that's where it becomes really important that like only like the specifics of the contract, like only in the case of a reorganization of this length, like that includes one of these, the double spend on this contract and like something like that. But yeah, those are definitely details I need to flesh out. Yeah, did you have any ideas for other real world systems that?
I think like the P plus epsilon attack is probably like fits right here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So like in a voting system, if like say Augur or something, everyone votes. The majority of people that vote an option, they get some payout, and the people that don't vote that option, they don't get anything. And like an attacker can just credibly commit P plus epsilon to some option that basically, I think like an article, there are articles online that explain it better than I do. But the idea is like, so like the equilibrium for one of those voting contracts without any interference is everyone will vote the truthful option because that's the shelling point.
Mm-hmm.
But what the attacker does is through shaping like the different the payouts for like the participants, it makes it a dominant strategy to vote for the untruthful option.
I did see. Yeah, I saw that.
Vitalik wrote an article on it before.
Right. I don't think I.
That was. Yeah.
What? Oh yeah, Vitalik's article. It's a little complicated for me, but I saw like Virgil's article. He describes an attack, and he says that it's equivalent to P plus epsilon attack. The attack where he's like, yeah, you just have a contract that says like, unless you pay, or like an extortion contract, basically, like unless you pay $5,000, then I'll alter the equilibrium of your game so that you lose more.
Yeah. Actually, I have a whiteboard. I can just like draw it out. So, is it reverse?
No, it's fine. I see 1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay. So basically, like, say you're like this guy, you're player 1.
Right.
Okay, player I. And this is player minus I. So if you vote 1 and the majority votes 1 with you, then like both of you get a payout of say P.
Mm-hmm.
And it like the same happens for like if both of you like vote option 2.
You
so
both
it's
get
a yeah.
Okay.
It's basically a coordination game between like all the players in the pool, I and minus I.
Okay.
And like if you don't coordinate, you get 0.
Okay.
So this is the original game, and it like happens in Augur and any crypto system that uses voting, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So like the idea is say like without loss of generality that option 1 is like the truthful option that everyone is supposed to converge on.
Mm-hmm.
An attacker can say, okay, like I'll use a smart contract to pay out P plus epsilon to anyone that votes option 2, provided that option 1 wins the vote. So like he modifies the payout.
Right.
And like for every player I in the system, it's always a dominant strategy to vote option 2 instead,
Mhm.
right? Because if he votes,
Right. That makes sense.
I think this is where it's supposed to be.
Oh.
Like for this bidder.
Uh-huh.
So like in this modified game, if he votes option 1 and option 1 wins, he gets P.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he votes option 2 and option 1 wins, he gets P plus epsilon.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And like so it's always better to vote option 2 basically. And because everyone votes option 2, the attacker doesn't need to pay anyone out, but like everyone bidded untruthfully.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's interesting because the attacker just needed to like credibly commit, yo, I'll pay you guys out. I'll pay out this amount if
And they won't even need to pay it, assuming everyone is rational.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this actually an attack on Augur, or have they addressed that?
This is just, it was like back in 2014, 2015 or something. It was just like theoreticized. I think like different crypto systems have come up with like different ways of dealing with this.
Mm.
In Augur, I think like what they do is there's a settlement period where, you know, people sell the shares of the thing, and yeah, I'm actually not fully sure how they deal with it, but
right.
Yeah, this was kind of like how I got into game theory.
Right. Yeah, this is a
like
really cool attack.
Example.
Yeah. I wonder if in the real world the shelling point is strong enough that people are willing to like not do their dominant strategy just because they think people are stupid, or like, you know, like people aren't necessarily rational. They're just like,
right. Yeah, like I think like in practice I don't think it's been attempted yet. But it's definitely interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like looking at the game theory course on Coursera, and it was like, it's like that game where it's like you want to bid 2/3 of the average of everyone else's bid. So in a game like that, like if the numbers are 0 to 100, you obviously wouldn't want to bid more than 67 because you can't win with more than 67. But if everyone thinks that way, then you should bid 2/3 of 67.
Mm-hmm.
But then if everyone thinks that way, you should bid 2/3 of 2/3 of 67. Then everyone should bid 1. But in reality, when they run that example, like people just bid like 50 or like 33 because people are just dumb. Like
they don't think that far, I guess.
Yeah, so it's like interesting how like sometimes game theory is sort of like a balance between rational actors and then irrational actors.
Yeah. I think it's just like situational. Like if Vitalik says like, you know, I'm gonna pay out like P plus epsilon to anyone that, you know, messes up this vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm gonna mess up that vote.
Right.
For sure. Right. I trust that he's gonna pay out. So.
I guess that's important. Yeah, it needs to be a reliable sort of commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Cool. I don't know. Are there any other systems? I think that's. I guess selfish mining is kind of one of those, where like.
Yeah.
You have an incentive to not propagate your blocks once you find them.
Yeah. Selfish mining is probably like the classic example, like in the blockchain space for this problem.
Did they like? Was there ever a change to address it in Bitcoin?
I don't think so.
And people just don't do it?
Yeah. I feel like in some research paper somewhere it said that like people really like basically like no one has deviated from like the equilibrium strategy of just being honest in the blockchain space yet.
Is it because people would say like if a pool started doing selfish mining, then people would just leave the pool?
I think it's more like of if you do something like that, you might devalue your coin. So like if you have like a bunch of money invested in ASICs and stuff, you don't want to do anything that might affect the price of your coin.
Right. Yeah. I think it's interesting how like, I mean, not to bring up the contentious like prog pow debate, but it seems to me like from a game theoretic point of view, like you should want ASICs. Like, I mean, if everyone had ASICs, you would want ASICs because there is a greater cost to like devaluing your coin versus with like if everyone's using GPUs, you can still sell that hardware.
Right.
Like if the price of Ethereum goes to zero, then your ETH hash ASICs are pretty much useless.
Right.
I don't know. It's an interesting debate. Yeah, I think something interesting that something else that's interesting is like there's been a rise in like empty blocks being mined in Ethereum. There's like some pools that have started mining empty blocks. Like I think it's gone from like, I don't know, 1% to like 4% or something. Maybe it's back down, but for a while there was a lot of empty blocks. I think it's shown that like on average, like empty blocks are mined like a second faster because you don't have to, I think because you have to validate the block that you're mining on top of to see which transactions you can include. And that takes time. Like if you want to look through 2,000 transactions and make sure if I'm including transactions in my block, I can't include repeat transactions. Otherwise my block will get rejected. So I have to validate the block. But what people are doing is just mining on top of blocks without validating them. And then if they included transactions in their block, then they wouldn't have any way to know whether they're repeating transactions. So they just mine empty blocks in that case.
So they just want the money reward. They don't care about the transaction fee.
Yeah. So I think it might be this sort of payoff, like this, like if the transaction fees of the current transactions in the pool are like low enough, then it's just like the extra second I gain by not validating the previous block is worth me not including any transactions.
So to solve this problem, we can increase the transaction fee maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the reason why it's not 100% of empty blocks is because I'm sure most of the time it's profitable to include transactions. But
I think there's some special case where it's not profitable, and I wonder what those special cases are.
Yeah, I mean, I guess 4% of the time it's that special case.
Maybe because of the previous parent block has some very complicated transaction that's gonna take a while to validate, something like that. And then the miner knows that already.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's like a trade-off, like, how long it takes. Yeah. Basically how long it takes to validate the previous block. And then how much, the time that takes versus the gain of including transaction fees. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And that's a case where like a pool is doing something that's like harmful to the network, but like people aren't leaving the pool. I mean, it's technically harmful to like, mine empty blocks.
Okay.
I'm going to use the restroom real quick.
Okay. Yeah, we don't. Yeah. All right, we don't have to spend any more time. Yeah, I guess we can wrap up this call.
All right. Sounds good.
So, I don't know what are your. Do you have any thoughts on like how to make this study group as helpful as possible for everyone, or like, or should we just kind of continue with the same sort of schedule, like do a couple more?
Yeah, I'm happy with the same format, and I'm really happy with us slowing down the access problem. Just like I guess
Okay.
there's like sometimes people are really busy, sometimes people are not speaking,
Right.
so it's not nice to take a break in the middle to like go over.
Right. Okay. So do you think we should do a lecture and half of a exercise set per week, or the same as like 2 lectures and 2 exercise sets, or two lectures and 1 exercise, a full exercise set? I mean.
Yeah, I am totally okay with that. 2 lectures.
Okay. And then maybe every couple of weeks we'll just kind of like pause and then let people catch up.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I guess for next session, next Monday, we can do the next 2 lectures. So lectures 5 and 6, and then exercise set number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good.
That's good.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Thanks so much for joining in. That was fun. Yeah, I'm glad I understand the P plus epsilon attack now.
Same here. All right.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Awesome.
thanks, guys.
Hey, guys.
See you guys next week.
Yeah.
All right. See ya.